Well, hello everyone. I know I said we'd be back with Pucks and Brews on February 1st, not after, my stupid mistake last episode, but it is currently as we're recording Monday, January 23rd, and this episode is going to be out today because we have some big news in the hockey world, and let's just get right down to it. First and foremost, everyone, welcome into Pucks and Brews. I am your host, Michael Sparacino, joined as always by Liam, the Chellmaster Gottimer. I love calling you that. Great,
Shades, it's
great
funny.
nickname.
I've lost my last six games in Chell. It's been a
Oof,
really tough stretch recently.
oof.
Don't even want to pick up the controller. So
Yeah,
tough,
this is
tough
why
sledding.
it's just good to go back to old NHL games, the good ones.
Agreed. Agreed. Before EA Sports ruined it, but
Yeah, pretty much. But oh well, we still spend money on it. Anyway,
we do.
so
We
yeah, we
do.
do. We do. Anyway, so let's get right down into the thick of it. We have some big news. The Vancouver Canucks, I'm gonna say finally fired Bruce Boudreau. I They waited long enough. We all knew it was coming, and then well, I mean, it finally happened, and this was a roller coaster for him and the organization. And could they have handled it better? Absolutely. But yeah, you have any initial thoughts, Liam?
Yeah, it was the worst kept secret in the league, Shades, that this was going to happen. And everybody from Bruce Boudreau to Jim Rutherford to the Canucks fan base to everybody else in the NHL community knew that this was coming, knew that Rick Tocchet was going to replace Bruce Boudreau. And I guess to surmise it in one sentence, this could not make Jim Rutherford look any worse. And this situation could not make Bruce Boudreau look like any more of a fighting hero, just the ultimate protagonist for me. So yeah, very, very interesting situation. And Jim Rutherford, yeah, oof. That's all I gotta say. Oof.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of Jim Rutherford, I sent you a tweet last night of a Jim Rutherford. I don't know if it was a video because I didn't honestly click on the tweet when I saw it, but it was basically a quote that said, Jim Rutherford, and I quote, I've decided that I need to zip it. You think?
I think he actually did say that in his press conference.
Oh, he
And
did. I
yeah,
literally.
yep, there it is. Yep. He does need to zip it. And you know what? You live and you learn, no matter how many years experience you have in the league. And the one quote that really gets me, Shades, not from Jim Rutherford, but from Bruce Boudreau. He said, and I quote, I'd be a fool to say I don't know what's going on. But like I've said before, you come to work and you realize how great this game is. It's just, he's just blocking out all of the external toxic noise that the Canucks organization has put on his shoulders and is being the bigger man. I mean, yeah.
No, I'll give credit to Bruce Boudreau. He handled this like a total professional. He had to deal with all the tough questions for months, kept it as
Yep.
professional as could be. And I guarantee you he was sick of answering the questions, just as anybody would be. But I mean, he kept it as professional as he could be, as it could. And I mean, credit to him. I'm sorry that he had to go through the Canucks, for lack of a better way to say it.
And let me tell you, how many NHL head coaches, after they've lost 28 of 46 games in a season, would have the crowd, their home crowd, singing a song in your honor? It just goes to show that the record, the team's play, doesn't really matter. The coach, the person that Bruce Boudreau is, really assimilated himself really well with the Canucks and Vancouver community as a whole. And yeah, when there is a disconnect between the fan base and the upper management like there is right now with the Canucks, it's seriously, seriously concerning. And
Yeah,
Rick
we all
Tocchet's not going to fix that.
no, I highly doubt he will. Now we all
No
knew
NHL head coach will fix that.
no, no. With that organization right now, it starts at the top. Starts at the top, and it starts right with Jim Rutherford. And well, we've talked about Jim Rutherford before on this podcast. You know my thoughts on him and how just I don't think it was a good idea for Vancouver to bring him in the first place. But to go back to the beginning of the regular season real quick, we all knew things were bad right off the gate, right out of the gate for Vancouver when they lost like five or was it like seven in a row or something. And then believe it or not, at one point, about a month and a half ago, they were, I think, 2 points out of a playoff spot somehow. And then everything just came crashing down once again. Then the whole thing with Boudreau went and transpired how it did. And well, here we are. Rick Tockett's the new coach. That organization is in shambles. They're not willing to pay Horvat. I don't think any player wants to be there right now because, I mean, first off, look at who the head of hockey operations is. It's things have only gotten worse since he's been there. Outside of the midseason hire by Boudreau last season and almost run to the playoffs that was not meant to be. Muted.
Oh my gosh. I feel like that happens once an episode. But Jim Rutherford in this upper front office management for the Vancouver Canucks, it makes the former general manager, remember Jim Benning,
Yeah.
and how many people in Vancouver were up Jim Benning's behind for, the lack of moves that he made or, the contracts that he gave out. Now everyone has seemingly forgot about Jim Benning. And now the Canucks are just probably in one of the worst spots they've ever been in their franchise's history. And for a franchise that has been down in the dumps for as long as they have, ever since they came in the National Hockey League, that's saying something. Everybody, on this team is just not invested. JT Miller in his interview, a couple of nights ago, he said he's trying to block out the noise, but he knows that, he's unable to do that. He's having a subpar season. His Canucks are just a mess. So I just, well, Shades, we've talked about it for weeks. Roster management, front office executives, it's just, the way the team is constructed, just all around, it's just not conducive for a winning environment and never has been.
No, this is the Vancouver Canucks are the definition of a mid organization.
Yep. Very well said. Not bad enough to maybe get the number 1 overall draft pick. Although this year, Jim Rutherford will tell you that although he's not interested in draft picks, he just wants young players. He still wants the number 1 overall pick, right? Shades, I know that one's got you for a couple weeks, but yeah.
Yeah, for anybody that listened to our last episode, my brain was like, remember when in SpongeBob, when Patrick's brain works and the gears turn and smoke is coming out? That was kind of me trying to figure out, okay, what does this guy actually want?
Right. I don't know what he wants. I don't think anybody in the NHL community knows what he wants. Bruce Boudreau didn't know what he wants. Rick Tocchet, just want to win. And the Canucks are not going to win this season. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're not going to win the Stanley Cup, and they're, delusional if they think that a head coaching change on January 22nd is going to do that.
Yeah. Now to go back to Jim Benning for a second. I mean, he's the one who drafted. I'm pretty sure he's the one who drafted Quinn Hughes, drafted Elias Pettersson, Brock Boeser. But I mean, ever since Rutherford took over and their new GM came in, I mean, they traded for Ekman-Larsson. They gave that ridiculous extension to JT Miller, and it's just bad move after bad move when things were seemingly headed in the right direction, albeit slowly, but they were headed in the right direction.
They were headed in the right direction, and there were a couple of good moves that Jim Benning made, like you mentioned, but there were also a couple of really bad moves that Jim Benning has made. And again, it just goes along with what the Canucks have been, for their entire existence. I mean, do you remember when the Canucks acquired Erik Gudbranson and a 5th-round pick, and they traded away Jared McCann, a 2nd-round pick, and a 4th-round pick to the Penguins? Jared McCann is now a stud in Seattle. I don't know about that. The Tyler Myers contract, I mean, they've been trying to get out from under that for a very long time. He's making $6 million a season just for his size. This is a guy that cannot skate. The JT Miller trade was a good trade. I'll give him credit for that. Only giving up a 1st and a 3rd and a marginal prospect. But, now you re-sign JT Miller, and now, you don't have the salary cap to keep around your captain, Bo Horvat. So now that puts you in another, interesting move. So as many good moves as he's made, I feel like that there's been some marginally bad ones as well.
Yeah. I mean, there really is. I mean, I don't even know what to say anymore. Like, this organization just spews mediocrity. It really does. How was the team so close to a playoff spot last year? That's what I'm trying to figure out because they have largely the same roster with the same head coach.
If you read out their records by season since 2016, 2017, I mean, it just, outside of those two, outlying seasons, of course, last year where they were 10 games over 500, and 2019, 2020, which was the year that they went into the bubble and had that little run, since 2017, 2018, 31 and 40, 35 and 36, the 36 and 27, 2020 year, 23 and 29 last year, and now 18 and 25 through 46 games. It's just, they'll have that odd season where they have some success and find lightning in a bottle. And I really did think, Shades, to be honest with you, after that 2020 run, that this roster was going to take that next step. And it's just been, they had a good year last year, 10 games over 500, 12 overtime losses. Maybe that's, not ideal, but I expected a lot better of a record than 18 and 25. And I think on the surface, I guess Jim Rutherford looking at that, and look, that it came out yesterday that this decision to fire Bruce Boudreau was made before Christmas. So, this has been in the works for a very, very long time. So, everyone, the media attention, is rising right now, because Bruce Boudreau's getting emotional. Everyone's singing Bruce, there it is. But fact of the matter is he probably knew less than a month ago.
Yeah, no, the whole way they went about this was just a complete joke. Like him, the players, management knew they were going to fire him, and they just waited so long for seemingly no reason. But like we said earlier, it's the Canucks. Now, the question becomes, where the hell do they go from here? Because no coach is going to fix this. Rick Tocchet coming in, he's definitely not going to fix the disorganization from this team. I mean, like we mentioned earlier, the bad contracts, just the lack of competent roster building, the lack of good moves from an organizational standpoint, especially with bringing Jim Rutherford in after how his tenure in Pittsburgh transpired, which you and me were extremely critical of after Pittsburgh won those 2 cups. In my opinion, they have to go into a full-on rebuild just because that's their only option. What do you think?
I think any and all options are on the table. And I think that this trade deadline is going to be critical for the future of the Vancouver Canucks and which direction that they go. I think a full-on rebuild might not be the worst idea, because Shades, we've talked about in past episodes that the Canucks have never really underwent a full-on 100% rebuild. And if they do, they might come out the other side a little bit better off. But again, we'll see. Like I said, again, in previous episodes, they have 3 players at 3 premium positions that you can build off of. Quinn Hughes, number 1 defenseman, number 2 defenseman, fine. If you want to be a little critical of his defensive game, okay. Elias Pettersson is a number 1 center, and Thatcher Demko, he struggled a lot this season, but goalies go through years like this, And let's not say that the defense in front of him has exactly been the 1990s Devils, okay? Nope. It hasn't really been fantastic for Thatcher Demko, so I think you can, expect a turnaround next year. But for me, if I was running things at the trade deadline, I would do everything possible to trade JT Miller and re-sign Bo Horvat. But I know that's not going to happen because nobody is going to touch JT Miller with a 10-foot pole because he has 8 more years of term and has a really large cap hit, and the salary cap, at least for the next couple of years, is not going to increase, by a lot. So I guess it is trading away Bo Horvat, trading away your captain, trading away everybody that has value outside of Pettersson, Hughes, and Demko. And I'm not saying don't take calls on those 3. Definitely take calls. And if, somebody offers up a package that can make your team better, in the short term and the long term, then you absolutely consider doing that. But for right now, I just think, no option for the Canucks at this deadline has to be off the table. None.
Yeah, I mean,
what do
the
you
only
think? What would
problem
you
with
do?
the only problem with trying to get Miller off the books, you would have to give up draft capital, and they cannot afford to do that right now with where they are. Honestly, in my personal opinion, with the Miller contract until the end of 2030, yeesh. And then the Ekman-Larsson contract up after the 26-27 season. They're going to be, those 2 contracts are going to be complete anchors on the team. with where both, especially with where Ekman-Larsson's at in his career. Miller can possibly turn it around because he's still 29. So he can have a bounce back and play, but Ekman-Larsson, I just don't see. That's never been his game, never was in Arizona. It isn't now, hasn't been since he's gotten to the Canucks. I mean, if I'm them, I eat those contracts as long as possible, as long as I possibly can. And I don't know, just try and get rid of a lot of things in the meantime. But the problem is if you keep Pettersson, if you keep Hughes, if you keep Demko, how bad can you get? This is going back to the point of how high of a draft pick can they get if they keep all those guys?
Very good point. And I think if you keep all three of those guys, I think that there's a very good chance that the Canucks might be too good to find themselves with a high percentage in the draft lottery, because for a lot of these teams, that go through early season or mid-season, I guess you could say head coaching changes, they turn it around. Rick Tocchet is a defensive-minded head coach. The defensive side of the puck has been the aspect of the Vancouver Canucks game this season that has really led to their detriment more than anything else. So I wouldn't keep it out of the realm of the possibility that the Canucks could go on a little bit of a run in the second half. Are they going to sniff the playoffs? No, hell no. But could they find themselves, within 5-6 games of NHL 500 before the season's end? Yeah, I could see that. That's a realistic possibility. The head coaching change could help them get to that spot. And then guess where you are? You're picking 10th or 9th in this draft, albeit, a loaded draft class. But Conor Bedard, Michkov, Fantilli, they're all off the board at that point. So I would what Jim Rutherford said, try to get the number 1 overall pick, say he's going to tank without outwardly coming out and saying he's going to tank. Because if there's one player that can completely change the trajectory of the Vancouver Canucks, it is Conor Bedard. It really is. You talk about a team that needs Conor Bedard. Vancouver needs Conor Bedard.
Now,
what do you think?
Well, this is the Canucks we're talking about. So speaking of those bad contracts and players that do need a fresh start, a change of scenery like a Brock Boeser, how realistically, how much is he going to change things? Because if you look at a team like the Edmonton Oilers, they had 4 number 1 overall draft picks in a 6-year span, and they've won 1 playoff series over the last 13 years since that first number 1 pick.
Fair enough. But although it hasn't led to much playoff success, Connor McDavid still has it really changed, the trajectory of the Edmonton Oilers franchise. I mean, they were a franchise going into kind of no man's land, number 1 pick after number 1 pick, and Nugent Hopkins didn't really burst onto the scene like everyone expected him to necessarily. Taylor Hall, same thing, ended up trading him for Adam Larson. So for me, Connor McDavid was the one that really hit. And although they haven't won a Stanley Cup, I think if you ask Canucks fans if they were to draft Conor Bedard and it wouldn't lead to a Stanley Cup in the first 5 years, I don't really think they'd be upset, because at least they'd be out of their mediocrity realm and brought back to a little bit of relevance. And I just think Conor Bedard truly is the best player to come through the draft since Connor McDavid. He is that generational. But to talk about Brock Boeser really quick, like you touched on, what teams might be interested in him at the trade deadline. I just talked about this with Will on the podcast a couple of days ago. Colorado, the Islanders. How about Carolina? Max Pacioretty's now on long-term IR after tearing the same Achilles tendon he tore a number of months ago. And he was out there for the final minute of the power play when he tore his Achilles in a game that that the Hurricanes were winning by 3 goals. Why are you out there? I mean, it was a freak play, but why are you out there? I mean, but still. So I think there are going to be a lot of suitors for the players the Canucks are going to make available at the trade deadline. And they should be able to get what Jim Rutherford is looking for: draft picks, young players, whatever he says on a given day. So,
well, I mean, we'll see, because Boeser, like, his trade value is at an all-time low right now because he's gone through some stuff personally, and along with where the organization's at and just his overall production on the ice, I can't see them getting a first and a prospect like they would have if they would have probably traded him 2 years ago.
Agreed there. I think if they traded him 2 years ago, they would have gotten a much better package. I still think they can get a first round pick. I do. I mean, his numbers this year are not great. 9 goals, 18 assists for 27 points in 38 games. 0.60, 0.65 points per game. There's definitely room to improve. But for a team that needs a sniper, like the Islanders, like the Carolina Hurricanes, you don't have to give up a top-end prospect. Maybe that piques your interest. But I'm just looking at the roster right now, Shades, and just trying to evaluate who the Canucks would move on from. I mean, Kuzmenko, Mikheyev, you just signed. JT Miller, you just signed. We just talked about that. Boeser's probably going to move. Garland, 8 goals, 14 assists, 22 points in 45 games for a guy making north of $5 million a year.
4.95.
4.95.
So yeah,
close.
just under. So I have cap friendly pulled up right now.
No, you're good. You're good. Luke Schenn. I love Luke Schenn. I know you're not the biggest fan of Luke Schenn, but he's got 14 points in 46 games. He plays 17 minutes a game. He's a top 4 defenseman on the team. They've had their defensive issues. He could be of interest. Nobody's touching Tyler Myers for $6 million a season. Niels Höglander. All the hype around Niels Höglander is gone. He's got 9 points in 25 games. So Tanner Pearson's career is probably over. Vasily Podkolzin has 3 assists in 16 games. Remember, he was a top 10 pick for the Canucks just a couple of years ago. So there are a few players that they could get some assets for, but a lot of them are just locked up to a point that they're immovable, in my opinion.
Yeah, and this is what happens when you just have completely inept general managing. And honestly, a lot of it is within the last year or two. Which is sad because, this team had a chance to fix everything, and then they just dug a 10-foot hole when they didn't need to.
I think it was trying to over-improve a roster that had over-exceeded expectations. And I look at the 2019-2020 roster for the Canucks, not all that much different than the one that we're looking at right now. But, you look at guys like Josh Levo, who was really good in that bottom 6. Adam Gaudette, not necessarily playing in the NHL right now, but he was really good back then. Jay Beagle helped out. Jordy Ben on the back end. Sven Baertschi, where is Sven Baertschi at? So it was a very, very good. Chris Tanev was really good. He's now in Vancouver. Tyler Toffoli, he's gone. Chris Tanev's now in Calgary, Toffoli as well. So, yeah, it was just overchanging for me, this roster, after one successful season. Because like I said, before 2019-20, there was no success. So I think they just jumped the gun, in my opinion.
Yeah, probably. Because this team, like you said, you mentioned guys like Höglander and Podkolzin, and it just has not worked. It just has not worked. And like we said, now they're really going to need to. This organization, it's all going to come down to drafting. Because, outside of the guys we mentioned, Pettersson, Boeser, Horvat, Quinn Hughes, and Thatcher Demko. That's 5 guys. That's 5
and
guys.
Horvat's not going to be around. So.
No. Now, Kuzmenko looks pretty good, but he's a UFA at the end of the season, and I would just cut bait at this point.
Really? I would trade him cut bait by trading him at the deadline. I think they could get a nice package for Kuzmenko. He's making what, 895,000, something along those lines?
He is making $950, so close enough.
$950, but still, to bring a guy with no term, certainly there's some risk with Andrei Kuzmenko, right? He doesn't have a lot of longevity in the NHL. Doesn't have a big track record.
Actually, you want to know something funny?
Points. Sure. What do you got?
Through 45 games, he has 19 goals. Oh, wait, I almost made another mistake. So he's got 19 goals and 22 points for 41 games, a +6 rating, and only 2 penalty minutes through 45 games. For a guy's first year in the NHL, that's not bad at all.
And he's what, 27, right? Coming out of the KHL?
He is currently 26.
26.
He's turning 27, turning 27 in like 2 weeks.
And in the KHL, he was producing pretty well, right?
Double checking right now.
I remember looking at his stats a couple of weeks ago, but seemed like a good player.
Yeah, his last 3 years for SKA St. Petersburg, 14 goals, 33 points, 18 goals, 37 points, and 20 goals, 53 points. And the year before that, 12 goals, 31 points. So, productive player.
There's also another player who played at SKA St. Petersburg and entered the NHL, around his age 26, 25, 26, 27 season. And that's Artemi Panarin. And Panarin put up a lot of better numbers than Kuzmenko on SKA. He put up, near 60, 70 points a year. But I'm just saying, it wouldn't be out of the realm of the possibility for a guy to come over from the KHL and really make a significant impact. Like, I think whoever acquires Kuzmenko, and not really for the rest of this season, just more acquiring just his rights. I mean, they have his rights too after the 1 year, and be able to sign him long-term to a team-friendly contract. A nice piece could fall into their lap for whoever acquires Andrei Kuzmenko at the deadline. And I think it's pivotal, crucial for the Vancouver Canucks to realize the talent they have on their hand and realize that it's 1 year, over $900,000. That's a cap hit that most contenders can afford to take on. So if you want to enter a bidding war for Andrei Kuzmenko, Canucks got to start that now. They're going to get a nice package for him. They really are. I think so.
Yeah, Kuzmenko also has a potential performance bonus of 850,000. Now, I don't know exactly what that is offhand, but any team acquiring him does have to keep that under consideration or in the back of their mind. Nope, I'm trying to find. I don't see what the condition is for the performance bonus. All right, well, I tried. But even then, you're looking at 950,000 plus 8. You're looking at 1.8 million at maximum.
I would pay 1.8 million.
Yeah, for a guy that's for a guy for a top 6 winger, absolutely. I bring that in a heartbeat. Now the question is, where does he go? My question becomes, which team is going to pony up the most for him out of all the contenders?
I'll tell you who. The Toronto Maple Leafs.
All right.
That's who I think. I think they lost a winger in Ilya Mikheyev in the offseason. I think they could use a little bit of added punch, especially on the defensive side of the puck. Remember, like you said earlier, Shades, Kuzmenko's a good two-way player. I look at the Avalanche as well. I think the Devils are going to be interested in all of these guys. I think if you're looking where Timo Meier might end up, I think New Jersey is on the top of that list, but we'll talk about that next episode. But for Kuzmenko, I just think any contender is interested in Andrei Kuzmenko. I would think the Rangers are going to be interested as well if they miss out on one of Patty Kane, Vladimir Tarasenko, Timo Meier, one of those guys. If they want to go a cheaper route, maybe add a defenseman as well, maybe allocate your finances a different way. So it's really going to be a bidding war. I think so.
Yeah, I just, out of curiosity, I looked up Toronto's cap friendly page. They have a lot of UFAs at the end of the season. A lot. So anybody Kerfoot, Engvall, Jordy Ben, Justin Hall. No really big names, but still.
Yeah, for sure. Who do you think could be interested in Kuzmenko if you had to put your money on a team?
I'm looking towards a team that has made big moves at the deadline the last couple of years that have won.
I know where you're heading with this.
You think you know?
Yes, but let me see. What do you got?
I'm gonna take a shot in the dark here. Tampa Bay Lightning.
Nice. I like that. Not the team I was thinking of, but that's a good pick.
Actually, which team were you thinking of?
I was thinking of Vegas.
Oh, all right. That's not a bad option either.
But I like Tampa Bay too. And just real quick, Shades, a stat I need to point out about Andrei Kuzmenko. Do you know what his points per 60 is? 2.82 points per 60.
Holy crap. You serious?
0.87 goals per 60.
Oh my God.
This is on Puckpedia, by the way, so I think that's reputable enough. But yeah, 2.82 points per game for a guy who can max. So let me just say this also. If that's what he's putting up, I think he reached his performance bonuses.
Yeah, probably.
Or he's going to reach his performance bonuses.
Yeah, probably.
Barring an injury or some sort. knock on wood. But yeah, I think every team's going to be interested in this player. You know,
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, Tampa has a couple free agents as well this year that are going to be UFAs. Killorn, Nemesnikov, Edward Belmar, Perry. They got another year of Stamkos before he hits free agency. Ian Cole. I mean, they could fit him in. They can fit him in.
and let me tell
And
you, if it gets into a bidding war and the Canucks, excuse me, and the Lightning have to give up 2 first-round picks, I
ooh,
think they will. I think they
okay.
will. They
See
gave up
that?
2 first-round picks for Brandon Hagel
Okay,
last year.
so I just looked at their draft picks. They do
Probably not
not.
many.
Okay, so as of right now, they do not have a 2023 or 2024 first. So that could hamper them. And both of them are were because of the Brandon Hagel trade.
For sure, Shades.
All right, yeah. So yeah, Vegas might be a good bet. I should have looked that up first of all. All right. Yeah, anyway, so that's the disorganization that the Vancouver Canucks are currently in, have been in, will probably be stuck in for a couple more years. Any last things to add, Liam?
Well, I'm muted one last time for the podcast hands. That's all. It's just it's been the way the Vancouver Canucks have run their entire history, and hopefully they'll be able to turn it around. And a lot of interesting storylines as we head into the trade deadline with this particular team. Want to see where Andre Kuzmenko ends up. Want to see what's up with Bo Horvat. But I got to go. There's pest control downstairs, so I will see you later.
All right, have fun. All right, and I'm gonna just to end this episode by myself. First and foremost, thank you everyone for listening or watching. If you're watching the video portion of the podcast on YouTube, in the description box below, please like, follow, subscribe, share to our social media accounts, especially on YouTube and iTunes and Anchor. That would greatly that would help us, and we would greatly appreciate it. This has been episode 32, if I remember correctly. Yeah, episode 32 of Pucks and Brews. This episode basically went from what happened with Bruce Boudreau and the Canucks into, and I like how we transitioned it into basically a trade talk of where they should go, where we think they should go at least, and what players hold any trade value, and where they think possible trade destinations could be, and also, why the Canucks should arguably move on and just honestly possibly go full rebuild. So yeah, I like the discussion that me and Liam had. So like I said, once again, this has been Pucks and Brews. I've been your host, Michael Sparacino. Thanks again to Liam for hopping on when I needed him to last minute. This news kind of broke last night, and we weren't planning to record. So, Liam, you're a real MVP if you see this back. And yeah, like I said, once again, follow us in the description in our social media accounts listed in the description below. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. And we will be back with episode 33 on February, I think it was February 1st, we were saying. Just going to double check that real quick right before I head off. No, we're going to be back on January 31st, Tuesday. So in the meantime, everybody have fun. Hope you enjoyed a drink of choice while you were listening to the episode. I had my water because I snoozed my alarm a couple times and just got out of bed right before we recorded this. So yeah, hope everybody enjoyed the NFL games this weekend. Hope everybody's going to enjoy the NFL games this upcoming weekend. And everybody stay safe and have fun and enjoy some hockey and some football. Cheers.